We're starting right at 7 p.m. Council did meet between 5 and a half an hour ago to discuss the development charges, a separate meeting that will have separate minutes. We did not have a closed session, therefore, so we're moving right into the open agenda tonight. Council, is there any additional business? Looking left, looking right. Far end, Councillor Hamley.
Yes, regarding the upcoming budget, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to mention about the hate crime talk.
One, anyone down there? I'll have a couple of items. Staff, seeing none. Okay. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, the general nature thereof. I'm seeing none. Down to number 6, confirmation of the council minutes from September 23rd, 2019. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Thomas, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on September 23rd, 2019 be printed as adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. Number 7. No, I didn't. From the minutes from last time. There we go. Okay. Yeah, Council will remember I declared a pecuniary interest. The last meeting, it is coming up as bylaw. Just went past me too quickly. 21D. For the same reasons. So I think at that point, I'll step out of the chair. Councillor or Deputy Mayor O'Leary will step in and look after all the bylaws at that point when we get there. Thanks. Thank you. Now we can go to number 7.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Thomas, that City Council now move into the Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
All in favor? That is carried. So we are now in Committee of the Whole. Number 8, we have no public meetings. Number 9, we have deputations. There's 2 of them, starting with our clerk, Ms. Bloomfield, to discuss the draft code of conduct.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Municipal Act requires that municipalities establish codes of conduct for members of council and its local boards. The city does currently have a code of conduct, but it is outdated. The Municipal Act also requires that municipalities appoint an integrity commissioner. Council appointed Principals Integrity to be its integrity commissioner in March of 2018. Goals of the code of conduct were to have a robust document that members can use to guide their conduct. Throughout the document, there is commentary that helps better explain some of the clauses. This code also provides members and the public with a clear understanding of what is involved with the complaint process. Goals of the presentation are to provide a brief overview of the code. This presentation has a lot of do's and don'ts in it, which is reflective of the code. I think it is a good thing that there are do's and don'ts because that means members will be able to clearly identify what is within the scope of the code. And of course, if there's ever any question, the Integrity Commissioner can be contacted for clarification or advice. If you are looking for training on the Code of Conduct, it would be best provided by the Integrity Commissioner. The Integrity Commissioner put this code together and can explain why they have put certain clauses into the document. The Integrity Commissioners are experts in this field, and if amendments to the code are recommended, it would be best if I run the changes by the Integrity Commissioners in case there are any repercussions for removing or amending clauses. The purpose of the code is to provide a common basis and understanding for acceptable conduct. The scope, it applies to members of council, committees, and certain boards that have not adopted a code. It is anticipated that the DIA Board and the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation and Owen Sound Housing Company will accept this code as their own, as they have done this with the city's procedural bylaw. Other local boards have their own enabling legislation and are subject to their own rules. When a member discloses all known facts to the Integrity Commissioner, and as long as those facts remain unchanged, the member may rely on written advice provided by the Integrity Commissioner. The Integrity Commissioner will be bound by the advice given as long as the facts remain unchanged in the event that the Integrity Commissioner is asked to investigate a complaint. Members looking for clarification on any part of the code should consult with the Integrity Commissioner. Even though I am presenting this code to Council, it will be managed by the Integrity Commissioner, as the clerk and any other city staff cannot provide advice to members. There are key definitions at the beginning of the code, and there are definitions throughout the document that are embedded into applicable sections. The guiding principles are directly from the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Now, Part 1 of the code deals with avoidance of conflicts of interest. A disqualifying interest is when a reasonable person, fully informed of the facts, would believe that the member could not participate impartially in the decision-making processes related to the matter. A disqualifying interest is greater than a pecuniary interest. Where a pecuniary interest deals with financial concerns, this has to do with the relationship between the member and those who will be affected by the decision. A non-disqualifying interest is when the relationship between the member and other people is of such a nature that reasonable persons fully informed of the facts would believe that the member could participate impartially as long as the member discloses the interest through the transparency disclosure form, and as long as the member states why the interest does not prevent them from making any impartial decision. Members cannot participate in the decision-making process if they have a direct, indirect, or deemed pecuniary interest, or if there is a disqualifying interest. Members shall not contract with the city for the sale and purchase of supplies, services, material, or equipment. As the title of the section states, members need to avoid conflicts of interest. If you are ever in doubt, contact the Integrity Commissioner. Part 2, Gifts, Benefits, and Hospitality. There are definitions and a chart that provides guidance to members on how to be transparent and open with gifts, benefits, or hospitality that are offered or provided to them. No member shall accept any gift unless expressly permitted in the code. The chart outlines information on what is and is not acceptable. Again, if any doubt, contact the Integrity Commissioner. If disclosure is required, there is a member information statement that will need to be completed and provided to the clerk. Part 3 is only applicable to council members and to local board members if they adopt this code. If council has questions about what they can spend their individual budgets on, they should refer to the council budget policy. Essentially, this whole part advises members to refrain from handling money directly when assisting charities or not-for-profit and community-based groups. Money should go directly to the groups or volunteers. Members cannot directly or indirectly manage or control money relating to community or charitable organizations' fundraising. Part 4, do not disclose confidential information. Do not try and gain access to confidential information unless necessary to perform duties. Do not use confidential information for personal or private gain. Part 5, do not use city resources or information for personal purposes. Developed intellectual property, computer programs must exclusively remain the city's. Do not advertise for businesses on personal websites, newsletters, and printed material. Part 6, members must follow the Municipal Elections Act and the city's use of city resources during elections policy. It is the responsibility of the clerk to conduct the election in a fair and impartial manner. Candidates should not interfere with how the clerk carries out those duties. Part 7, do not use influence for any purpose other than for the exercise of official duties. Do not contact members of tribunals. Any contact should be done through the secretary. Part 8, business relations. Do not allow the prospect of future employment to affect the performance of duties. Do not borrow money from any person that does business with the city. Do not act as a paid agent. Do not refer a third party in exchange for payment or personal benefit. Part 9, members need to act with decorum at all times and should make every effort to participate in a caring and conscientious manner in the activities of boards and committees to which members have been appointed. Business needs to be conducted in an open and transparent manner, other than decisions which, by virtue of legislation, are authorized to be dealt with in a confidential manner in closed session. Deliberations and decisions need to take place in the open, which allows the public to view the process and rationale which was used to reach decisions and the reasons for taking actions. Part 10, accurately communicate the decisions of council or recommendations of committee, even if you disagree with them. Keep confidential information confidential. In all media communications, treat each other, staff, and members of the public with decorum, dignity, and respect, and do not use messaging that amounts to abuse, bullying, or intimidation. Members should not encourage disobedience of a bylaw in responding to a member of the public, as this undermines confidence in the city and in the rule of law. Members should adhere to bylaws, policies, and procedures of the city. Part 12. Treat the public and staff appropriately and without abuse, bullying, or intimidation. Ontario Human Rights Code and the city's workplace violence, harassment, and sexual harassment policy all applies to the members. Complaints involving members under this policy will be referred to the Integrity Commissioner. Part 13, act in accordance with the city's council staff relations policy. Part 14, do not influence, make decisions, or participate in the hiring, promoting, or terminating of a family member. Do not supervise or be in a position of influence over a family member. Do not use a family relationship for personal benefit or gain. Adhere to the city's staffing policy and procedures. Part 15. Do not undermine the implementation of council decisions. Do not engage in litigation or other legal challenges against the city or council's decisions. Decisions can be reconsidered in accordance with the city's procedural bylaw. Part 16. Do not obstruct the Integrity Commissioner. Do not threaten or undertake a reprisal against a person initiating an inquiry under the code or against a person providing information in an investigation. Do not destroy or erase documents. Do not refuse to respond to the Integrity Commissioner. Part 17. Any written advice given by the Integrity Commissioner binds the Integrity Commissioner in any subsequent consideration of the conduct of the member in the same matter, as long as all of the relevant facts were disclosed and the member adhered to the advice given. I think this Part 17 is critical to a member protecting themselves. If there's ever any doubt about an interest, the member should seek advice from the Integrity Commissioner because it could mitigate public exposure and reduce costs by avoiding an investigation if an inquiry is lodged by a member of the public. Another way for members to protect themselves is to make sure they read the council or committee agenda prior to the meeting. That way, if there's something listed on the agenda, you can reach out to the Integrity Commissioner and receive advice on the matter prior to the meeting. If the agenda hasn't been read, you may end up voting on something you didn't even realize you had a pecuniary interest with, and that could lead to an investigation. Part 18. Each member should review the code on a regular basis, and we do tend to do this with our turnover with boards and committees. We always hold a training session, so councillors will see it through then, and as well as our committee members. It should also be reviewed at the beginning of each term. A code of conduct component will be included as part of the orientation session. On to the appendix. Part A is the informal complaint procedure. The code recommends that non-members use the informal resolution process, so members should be familiar with what that entails as it is an opportunity to resolve a complaint. Part B outlines the formal complaint procedure. Requests for an investigation shall be sent directly to the Integrity Commissioner on the appropriate form. Should a complaint fall on my desk, I will also just forward it directly to the Integrity Commissioner. A complaint must be made by an identifiable individual, and the complaint should include the name of the member, provision of code contravened, facts, contact information for witnesses, and complainant. Investigations will not take place during the election, which is between nomination day and voting day. Classification, investigation, and council role is all outlined in the formal complaint procedure, and a complaint will be processed in compliance with the confidentiality requirements of the Municipal Act. The council staff relations policy has also been updated to include boards and committees and additional clauses from the Code of Conduct to have all council staff relations material in one policy. The draft Code of Conduct and updated council staff relations policy went to the Corporate Services Committee in September. The committee approved the code as written and directed staff to bring forward a bylaw to approve the updated council staff relations policy. When the Corporate Services Committee minutes are presented later in tonight's agenda, if council wishes to make changes to the draft code of conduct, I would recommend taking that motion out of the minutes and having any changes to the code be done by separate motion to ensure that there is clarity on the changes being proposed. And with that, I can answer any questions you might have on the code of conduct.
Great, thank you. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Tammy.
Just a comment, Madam Clerk, and I'm sure you'd agree with this. I think it's really important to highlight the informal resolution process that's in that code. And for those watching perhaps on TV, I know physicians regulators, lawyers regulators, more and more disciplinary bodies, for instance, are going to informal resolution whenever they can. It's often the more expedient way of doing it. You don't lock yourself into formal processes. And believe it or not, people are able to say informally and otherwise that they made mistakes and they should have done things different, and that's just being human. So I would just urge members of the public to carefully look at the informal resolution process if they ever have concerns about City Council.
Other questions for Brianna? Seeing none, thank you very much. So it will pass with the minutes that are
That is
coming up
correct.
later.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. Our next deputation or presentation is from Mr. Kafalis with regard to the 10th Street Bridge Replacement Project.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship. The 10th Street Bridge was closed last week in preparation for the replacement of the bridge. The detour itself took approximately 9 hours to put in place, even with all the advanced prep work that took place in advance of actually initiating the detour. The biggest task associated with the detour was the work associated with every signalized intersection along the detour route, which required having the traffic timings changed, and in some cases changing the light fixtures as well. And that work could only take place just prior to closing the street and installing the detour. The project team met Friday morning to discuss initial problems and points of concern. Included in that meeting was Inspector Dave Bishop from the OSPS to help identify potential mitigative measures to help with some of the problem areas. Over the weekend, additional lane painting or line marking took place and additional signs were installed. Police services help identify the issue or help work with the issue of the left-hand turn as you're heading southbound off of 2nd Avenue West onto 9th Street, where it appears that some motorists are ignoring the signs, and it's causing some delays in the morning rush hour, and mostly at that time. So police services asked, or has been asked to help out with that, and they've agreed to do that. The contractor is prepping for additional water main work that needs to take place before the bridge is replaced, or removed, I should say, and prepping for the demolition of the old Gavaris building as well. Staff will be preparing and presenting comprehensive reports for to the Operations Committee, and we'll be doing this on a monthly basis in conjunction with my reports, periodic reports here at Council. The reports will have provide a detailed status of the project based on the key milestones, and these milestones include the water main replacement or diversion, the initial removals including the bridge and the Gavaris building, the West Side River removals and reconstruction, and this includes installing the sheet piles and the piles, the H piles that will be required to form part of the foundation. The East Side River removals and reconstruction, the same thing, the sheet piles and the H piles that will be included as part of the construction of the new foundation on each side. The bridge girders, which will be starting, manufacturing in the very near future. And again, the bridge superstructure and construction itself once those bridge girders are in place. That'll include site works, the asphalt paving, the bridge reopening, and the final restoration of the project. The reports will discuss the status of each of these milestones in terms of what tasks have been completed, if the milestone is on track to be completed on schedule, if it isn't on schedule, the reasons for the delays, who or what is responsible for delays, possible measures to get back on track, and the budget status as we move along through the project schedule. In closing, what I'd like to share with our viewers, if everyone can still take their time when they make their way to work or school or to wherever they go in the morning and the evenings, to allow for more time to get to their destinations. Be patient as you make your way around the detour route. Drive a little slower. Be courteous. There's some people that still need some coaching as they make their way along the detour route, so let people in. And again, put on your favorite radio station, listen to your favorite tunes, and we'll get through this. For most part, the detour is working quite well. We expect to continue monitoring how the detour is working, especially these next couple of weeks, where there's certain aspects of the project that won't require as much attention in terms of what's being done, because there's a lot of prep work. So we'll continue monitoring how the detour is performing and making small adjustments as we go along to help improve the circulation through the detour route.
Good. Thanks, Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dennis, I was kind of preparing myself for a lot of complaints when this started. I don't know about the rest of council, but I'm getting the opposite. There's a lot of good things being said. So at this point, I know it's early, but congratulations on a great job with this detour. I think it's fantastic. Like you said, there's a lot of learning to go on yet. I think the people that are trying to get to Tim Hortons off of 2nd Avenue will eventually learn to get to 3rd Avenue and turn left at the four-way stop and go straight through it at 2nd Avenue West. But in general, I think it's been great. I was at the Y this morning. I got 4 different compliments. In fact, my friend Rick Fernell said you should save the $8 million and forget about the bridge and just leave everything the way it is now. So lots of good comments, and hopefully you can pass that on to your staff.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Kafalis, based on what I'm hearing at that intersection that you're talking about, I would encourage people to put their windows up and not necessarily share their opinions with everybody in the neighborhood, because the person they're yelling at who's learning the errors just as much as everyone else might be, I don't know, they may have a temper that you don't want to provoke sometimes, and I think everyone should be a little more patient, as you said, but don't yell out your window. We heard some great stuff today. John, were you out there with your business card? Or?
I was out with Officer David Smith. I bought him a coffee and just sat down. I was out there Friday with Officer Dave Smith. I bought him a coffee, and we had the most fun half hour I've ever had. Stop turning left. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Councillor Tamming. It was good of you to be nice to a police officer in town. Councillor Kepke.
Just wanted to bring attention, it's not only the vehicular traffic that needs to pay attention, it's the cycling
Walking.
traffic and the pedestrians. So everyone needs to be on the lookout for where they're going, if they're allowed to go, when they can go.
It's like driving in a whole new city, isn't it? Good, thank you. Public question period. Not seeing anyone go to the microphone quickly. Number 11, we have no correspondence received. Number 12A, Ms. Bloomfield, with regard to appointment of bylaw enforcement officers.
Yes, through your worship, we have hired a new bylaw enforcement officer who started today. And the recommendation in the report is to direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to amend the appointed officer's bylaw to remove Sean Maxwell as a bylaw enforcement officer and a property standards officer, and appoint Christopher May as a bylaw enforcement officer and a property standards officer.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move this recommendation. I do have one question. I know back in the past we used to get this a lot into committee. Because this is just purely administration, does these reports need to come and get council approval, or would we be able to give that authority to staff?
We do have to pass it by bylaw, and which requires a report ahead of time, but there is always the opportunity for council to delegate authority if that's their wish, but we would still need a report to come forward to do that.
We're not saving any time we do it. Okay. Well, I'll move that recommendation as is.
Good, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. 12B, facade and structure improvement program, Ms. Coulter.
Thank you, Worship. Due to timing, Council is asked to consider a facade and structural improvement grant for the Selden House, a prominent designated heritage building and landmark within the downtown. It's located on the northeast corner of 10th Street and 2nd Avenue East. The The proposal includes scraping and painting all windows and trim, repainting that in the same color, caulking the windows, and significant brick restoration and repointing. Because of the unique shape of this building with frontage and on both 10th Street and 2nd Avenue East, and then prominent rear and side facades, it is recommended for two double facade grants. The proposed restoration work is consistent with the heritage attributes of the designating bylaw, is consistent with the design of the original building, and certainly does address important structural deficiencies and will improve the appeal of the building and extend its life. The recommendation is then to approve two double facade grants for this building at 1005 2nd Avenue East, subject to the conditions outlined in Schedule C.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I don't mind moving this, Your Worship. I think this is exactly the kind of project that the city had in mind when they created the facade grant. The Selden is one of the last of the grand old hotels in Owen Sound, and I think anything we can contribute, however big or small, to maintaining that building is worth doing.
Thank you. Just one question. I assume that they won't need to be constructing onto the sidewalk to the point that they would move the sidewalk onto what would be the asphalt part of the road.
Through your worship, one of the conditions is that they would require a street occupation permit. I know the owner was in today and spoke to Mr. Oh, the meeting didn't happen today about that work. We will be looking for hoarding and being able to continue to move pedestrians, albeit safely, in that area.
I'm just thinking about the difficulty of getting through that intersection anyway. Any other questions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Mr. Robert, have you got the next one, 12C? Dennis has it.
Thank
Mr.
you, Your
Capellas.
Worship, and through Your Worship. The report discusses the need to change the traffic bylaw to remove parking along the detour route that is put in place to accommodate the replacement of the 10th Street Bridge. The parking is also being removed along streets adjacent to the detour route to accommodate overflow traffic this is being done more so to address winter conditions, which results in snow accumulation due to storage that narrows the roadway and starts to obstruct traffic. These conditions are temporary, and parking will be reinstituted once the detour is removed. There is a small correction in the report. During the detour, there will be additional parking installed along 10th Street in the 200 block of approximately 20 stalls, 4 or 5 on the north side and about 15 to 16 on the south side. The streets affected include 1st Avenue East, 900 block east side, 3rd Avenue East, 800 block east side, 3rd Avenue East, 900 block both sides, 8th Street East, 100 block both sides, 8th Street East, 200 block south side, 9th Street East, 100 block south side, 9th Street East, 200 block, north side, 9th Street West, 100 block south side, 3rd Avenue West, blocks 800 and 900 on the west side, 8th Street West, the 200 block on the south side, and 9th Street West, the 200 block on the north side.
So when you said 10th Street, that was 10th Street East as well? Yep.
Excuse me, yes, 10th Street East.
Councillor Dodd, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I would move this recommendation as well. I would again stress the importance when we're talking about these streets. Let's just think of between the post office and where Shorty's is. Please do not park on those roadways. Those roadways are now supposed to be 2 lanes both directions. And I couldn't tell you how many times I've noticed that during the lunch and dinner hours, people are still parking on those streets to attend a local establishment. So I would like to ensure that we get out to the media and get out to the residents that there will be no parking on that street.
Okay, any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. What are we down to? 12D. Booking coordinator with regard to Motorsport Monster Truck Show.
Thank you, Worship. Ralph Moore of Edge Motorsports has requested council consider an agreement for the use of Victoria Park on October 26th and 27th for a monster truck show. Setup would happen on Friday, October 25th. The event includes 5 monster trucks that do jumps and maneuvers on the large track portion only, not on the 400-meter track and not on the infield area. Mr. O'Leary has been working with the Owen Sound Agricultural Society to coordinate their approval for the use of the grandstand for this event, as well as the continued access to their barn during the event over that weekend. The conditions for the event are outlined, and it's recommended council approves the agreement for Friday, October 25th, Saturday, October 26th, and Sunday, October 27th, and you would approve a bylaw to execute that agreement.
Thank you. So, biggest big truck fan, put up your hand next. Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
Well, actually, I'm not a big fan of that, but I am excited that this is a new event coming to Owen Sound. This is the first time for this, and I understand there's 800 tickets sold already, so this is a good news story. I move that recommendation.
Other questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. 12E, Hazardous Waste Services Agreement.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, staff is seeking council's approval to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents to amend the household hazardous waste service agreements. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks has directed Stewardship Ontario to wind up the municipal hazardous or special waste program to enable the transition of the responsibilities of the hazardous and special waste to individual producers. The agreement is being amended to extend the deadline to June 30th, 2021. The previous date was December 30th, 2020.
Good, thank you. Anyone interested? Councillor Hamley?
I will move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. 12F, Community Transit Grant Program.
Oh, thank you. Through Your Worship, staff is seeking council's approval to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents, enter into a transfer payment agreement with the province of Ontario under the community transfer agreement. The city was awarded $1.24 million in April of 2018 to deliver and operate a daily service from Owen Sound to Guelph. This proposed service will include stops in Chatsworth, Williamsford, Durham, Mount Forest, Arthur, Fergus, and Elora. The city initially advertised for a request for proposals seeking a carrier, and we received 2 submissions. Both submissions were deemed non-compliant for a specific reason. The city has since entered into negotiations with a specific carrier, and the negotiations have been positive to date. And as we speak, we're still pushing for the service to begin January 1st, 2020.
Great, thank you. Now, Dennis, when you read off those places, it reminded me of being on a Via Rail where the conductor read off the next stops. And have you ever done that? Yeah. Engineer and conductor, yeah, same thing. Okay. Is anyone? Okay. Councillor Thomas?
I would move the recommendation, Your Worship.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12G, Halloween Hunt Road Closure. Oops. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the last council meeting, a road closure was approved for the Halloween Haunt event on October 26th. Since then, it has been determined that although the DIA board was advised of the road closure, the DIA membership had not been notified. Since our last council meeting, the entire DIA membership was provided the opportunity to comment on the proposed road closure. Of the 262 members that were emailed, 27 comments were received, which represents 10% of the membership. 13 were opposed to the closure, 11 were in favor, and 3 were neither in favor or opposed. Those opposed had concerns that the loss of parking and traffic congestion in the downtown due to the 10th Street Bridge replacement were challenges enough for customers and closure should be limited. Those in favor of the closure felt the event attracted additional people downtown and closing the street may attract even more people. With last year's event generally being accepted as a success, it appears the Halloween haunt can be held with 2nd Avenue East open. Should council wish to reconsider the decision to close 2nd Avenue East, certain procedural steps need to be taken. First, a motion is required to waive the notice of motion provision of the procedural bylaw due to the lack of time between the next council meeting and the event. Second, a motion is required to consider a decision previously made by council through resolution number 190923-11. And should both of those pass, a motion can be brought forward to either keep 2nd Avenue East open or close it during the Halloween haunt. Prior to any of that taking place, a motion is required to receive this report for information purposes.
Thank you very much. So the first thing I'm going to ask is for a motion, which is a recommendation to receive this report for information purposes. Councillor Merton?
I will make that motion.
Okay, so all in favor? That is carried. I wonder if you can scroll down on the screen to those other 3 motions, just so everybody can see it at the same time. Councillor Thomas?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd make a motion to waive the notice of motion provision of the procedural bylaw due to the lack of time between the next council meeting and the event.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Go ahead, Councillor Merton.
The real issue is the safety of the children in the Halloween haunt event. To me, the question to close or not to close is not the core question. The core question is, how do we keep the children and the public safe? So as we work through our motions, I'd like to also have part of the conversation, what strategies do we need to put in place for safety? We originally had information presented that passed the motion to close. Thank you to Councillor Gregg. We were able to obtain additional information that's brought us to this point again. I respect the feedback from downtown merchants. It's important that we get their feedback. But for me, I still do not have the answer. What strategies will we put in place to keep the children safe?
Okay, so for now, we're looking at the motion to waive the notice of motion so that we can even discuss it. So with regard to that motion, is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Hold your hands up clearly because we have to get 2/3, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Even if I vote 5, then it's not carried. So the motion to waive the notice of motion is defeated. Therefore, the following motions can't be made, and we won't be having any further discussion. Therefore, the decision made at the last meeting stands. The road will be closed. 12H is a verbal oral report from Deputy Mayor O'Leary with regard to Grey County Council.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had a presentation from Alison Govier and Ian Reek to discuss alcohol and drug strategies. They also had Corey Fair tell his personal story of how he became addicted to opioids. Corey's story was a wake-up call for everyone because it was real and it was heartbreaking. This is a middle-aged man that was dealing with severe back pain, and his doctor sent him home with a prescription for 400 oxys. Part of the strategy is to hold public forums, and the first one was here in this council chambers last Tuesday night. Director of Community Services Pam Coulter, Mayor Boddy, Councillors Kepke, Merton, and myself were in attendance. There are 3 more forums coming up as well, October 8th in Hanover, October 22nd in Wyerton, and October 29th in Port Elgin. Our council chambers was packed here last Tuesday, so people are concerned. This is a topic that this council takes very seriously. I know that all of our council members would have been here if their schedules had permitted. The Director of Housing presented an updated housing and homelessness plan. The plan identifies objectives and targets to support the vision of housing for all. The funding for the plan is through the Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative and the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative through the province and Grey County. The revised plan was developed through input from the community and service agencies through public consultations, focus groups, facilitated discussions, surveys, and input from people with lived experiences. Information was added from Grey County's official plan, homelessness enumeration, joint strategic planning with the Canadian Mental Health, Grey Bruce Health Services, and the Poverty Task Force. There is also an active notice of motion asking for a report on changes to the official plan and zoning bylaws to encourage affordable and attainable housing, including tiny homes and smaller lot sizes. And that's my report.
Good, thank you. Any questions for Deputy Mayor O'Leary? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Not really to Deputy Mayor O'Leary, more to the Director of Community Services. The tiny homes issue has came up multiple times. Now, in the Provincial Planning Act, it does state that there's a minimum square footage, does there not? Or is there something that we can be looking at to actually incorporate that into CIP or something?
Through your worship, you may be thinking, I think it's in the building code and there is a minimum GFA, but we also in our zoning bylaw have a minimum gross floor area depending on the type of home, single, semi, town, apartment. We did do a zoning amendment or a variance for Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit to let them bring that size down. We will, like the county, and with the new PPS, the city will 2019-2020 be updating our official plan. So that will be one of the issues we'll want to look at, is put the policy in our official plan, which will then translate into our zoning bylaw, which is kind of where the rubber hits the road in terms of the legally enforceable work. But certainly we'll be watching very closely what happens at the County of Grey.
Does that answer?
Yes,
So technically, with a variance application, it can be done now?
We did do that for Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing, yes.
And the county just redid their official plan, and I think there's allowance in there for that flexibility already that we discussed at the county level. So, yeah, good. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Tamming.
Right. Excuse me. Madam, through your worship, Madam Coulter, a question about the opioid, and perhaps Deputy Mayor can assist us as well. I unfortunately had a serious conflict that night. I could not attend. I've emailed Ian Reich, and he's agreed to have coffee with me, and I think we can all inform ourselves in various ways, and I also plan to go to the Wyerton meeting. My question is this: can you remind those of us who may be interested, and I think many of us are, what are the next steps? Is something coming to the committee from Public Health and so forth?
There is a plan that the working group has been working on. It's in draft form and it will be coming forward, and it does sort of lay out sort of roles or responsibilities for, municipalities and public health, and, so it looks at all the different stakeholders. So I think that's certainly something to watch for following those open houses.
Okay. Good. Down to number 13, consent agenda.
Through your worship, on the consent agenda this evening is minutes for receipt from the Library Board, DIA Board, Owen Sound Community Fund, and the Grace Level Conservation Authority. Business licenses were issued to Jets Admin at 1051 2nd Ave East, A Plus Taxi, which relocated to 328 Street East, Edward Jones at 248 Street East, and the Owen Sound Family YMCA Community and Employment relocated to 945 3rd Ave East. Lastly, there is the information of council package. A full listing is available at 13F.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Dodd, receive it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that City Council receives items 13A to 13F on the consent agenda dated October 7th, 2019.
Good. All in favor? And that is carried. If we can go back up to 13A, Councillor Thomas, anything to report on the library?
Not much, Your Worship, not because we didn't do anything, but because these minutes are from June 27th, and because the Library Board doesn't meet over the summer, as many city committees don't. It's just a long, long delay, and pretty much everything that's in these minutes has already happened. I will observe, though, the library continues to be one of the best visited municipal buildings in Owen Sound, with more than 20,000 people per month going through the doors there. So it continues to be a vibrant and exciting place.
Good. Thank you. DIA Board, Councillor Kepke, you doing that?
Thank you, Your Worship. August 15 minutes of the DIA. A presentation was received from the Grey Bruce Health Unit respecting harm reduction and the opioid crisis. and the presenter highlighted current programs being offered by the Grey Bruce Health Unit to address opioid use within the community, including safe use training, referral services for treatment, needle exchange, and vaccinations. A report was received respecting the Downtown Action and Marketing Plan, and there's been a evaluation team has been set up to review the RFP. Comments were provided concerning post-event cleanup and the appearance of the downtown core after events are hosted, and a pilot project has been launched to install receptacles in the downtown core to collect cigarette waste. And that's all that's noteworthy in those minutes.
Jump in a different order while your mic's on if you want to do the, are you doing the Grey Sauble?
Yes, I can do Conservation Authority next. August 28th meeting of Conservation Authority. The executive of GSCA and Grey Sauble Conservation Authority and Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority discussed the sharing of a CAO general manager between the two authorities, and as the minutes progress from other months, you will see the progress of that outcome. GSCA approved signing a separate agreement with the municipality of Northern Bruce Peninsula for full cost recovery for planning services in that municipality. The board discussed the Inglis Falls Road and the redevelopment which is taking place in 2020. There were various agricultural land leases were discussed, and I believe that would, oh, there's one more thing. A letter from Minister Urick, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks regarding conservation activities was received, and a response was also prepared to the minister on that. And I believe that was it for those set of minutes, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Going back to 13C, Owen Sound Community Fund, Councillor Merton.
Through your worship, the Owen Sound Community Fund provided checks to the successful grant recipients, Active Lifestyle Center, Owen Sound Rugby Club, and Safe and Sound for the Girls Group. The Community Foundation provided funds to the Reconciliation Garden Project at Castle Beach and the Reach Center. There is currently a review of the Random Act of Kindness Day in process. Stay tuned for upcoming information as the details become firmed up. And that's all.
Good, thank you very much. So we're down to number 14 in the agenda, and the first one is minutes of Accessibility Advisory Committee. I understand that there wasn't a quorum at it, but we still have to receive the minutes as is. I can't remember who's sitting on that. Go ahead.
As you said, through your worship, there were not enough members present, so the minutes of the non-meeting, because there was no quorum, are presented for you.
So for approval?
Yes.
Good, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Minutes of Corporate Services, Councillor Hamley.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Corporate Services Committee on September 26th had the great misfortune to have me as acting chair that day. We heard from BDO respecting the latest audit of the city's finances. There were no changes to the auditor's planned procedures, and no issues were identified in the testing that was performed. Additionally, no risks were identified. We also heard from the fire chief regarding the quarterly time management stats, which the takeaway from that was that public education was up over the previous quarter from 8 hours to 44 hours, owing to the fact that there was an increased demand for fire prevention in schools. We had a mid-year financial update. We currently have a surplus of $200,000, but that number was just a little bit misleading because there are quite a few projects that are completed, but we don't have all of the invoices and receipts for yet, and that the third quarter report will have a much better review. The clerk also presented a draft of the Code of Conduct, which was discussed earlier this evening, so I won't get into it. And finally, Councillor Gregg gave a notice of motion that basically asked staff to bring forward a report reviewing how the city pays our portion of the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority's levy. And with that, Your Worship, I would move receipt.
Good, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. We're down to number 15. We have no postponed matters. Number 16, motions for which notice was previously given. Councillor Merton.
Through your worship, the 10th Street Bridge project is one of the most significant public works projects in recent years in Owen Sound. The scope of the project is massive. Under normal circumstances, public works projects are reported through committees, particularly operations in this instance, and then summarized for council. However, I suggest that the scope of this project is similar to the recent City Hall renovations, which were overseen by an ad hoc committee of council and reported to council regularly. I also believe both council and the public should know exactly who is responsible for what, both in reaching milestones and when they are not achieved. I do not believe it is the work of council to micromanage a project. We have an excellent city staff to handle these details. My motion is to request to have reported to us variances in the project, who is accountable and why. This is simply to highlight council's oversight and governance role in public works and to ensure ongoing and continuing public confidence. We have learned significant lessons from City Hall renovations and the Downtown River Precinct project recently. In light of these lessons, I make the following motion: that City Council requests that staff prepare and communicate to Council and the public a variance tracking report related to the 10th Street Bridge replacement project, including impact analysis incorporating but not limited to include the nature of the delay, who is responsible, time lost, financial allocation, responsibility, and outcomes relating to project impact.
Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Tamming.
I said at the last meeting that I would support the idea of accountability in this sense, that we should have a schedule that people can look at and expect certain milestones to be hit. I'm concerned about the part of the motion that speaks to naming those who are responsible. For instance, that could involve staff, that could involve third parties. It could trigger legal repercussions that I think we might regret. I don't know if there's ever been a precedent for this before. I can support the motion in the sense of a timetable and milestones and saying whether we're hitting them or not. I think identifying people who are responsible could lead you to zones that you don't want to be in.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Worship. I guess would look for some little bit of clarification. From what Councillor Merton is proposing, what is different from what the Director of Public Works and Engineering was proposing earlier today about doing a tracking annually or monthly through the Operations Committee? Am I just missing, will you be already doing most of the things that Councillor Merton's motion is referring to?
Thank you for the question. Through your worship, I believe we will be as part of our Operations Committee report, monthly report.
Good. Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
Thank you, Worship. I don't think I can support the motion because I believe it is micromanaging. And the one thing in the motion that I may disagree with is, yes, it is a big job, but I'm not sure it's as big a job as even the Downtown River Precinct. It's more money, but I don't know if it's really a bigger job. But one of the things that I asked for last week was target dates. And the reason I asked for that is because I believe you would have that already. You know, when is the bridge actually coming out? When is the building next to it being demolished? And that sort of thing. So I wasn't asking for something that you don't already have. And that's what I'd be worried about is I know that you're so busy as it is that, you know, I think this motion asks for more work out of staff, and sometimes that's asking too much. Thanks.
Others? Mr. Kafalis, before your time, before my time, I'm not even sure if Pam was around then when they did the big dig down Main Street. That I don't know dollar value, but that had to be a bigger, more disruptive project. digging up the Main Street block at a time from 7th Street all the way up to 11th Street. I know being involved with the wastewater upgrade, that was a $48 million project, and there was a critical timeline, and I remember seeing reds and greens and yellows as we were approaching certain things that had to be done before we could do the next step, et cetera. Came to operations and then through operations to council, and I think that's sort of the template you're following.
Thank you, Your Worship. That is my intention, yes.
So it would be similar as what has been done in practice in the past. Councillor Gregg.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm very pleased with what I heard from the director earlier tonight in terms of what he's looking to provide through the committee. That meets my expectations. I do just take a little bit of note with Deputy Mayor O'Leary's comments about the River Precinct perhaps being a more substantial or bigger project than this. Things have changed a lot since Main Street was renovated or reconstructed many years ago. Even Amazon had not even been essentially born at that time. This, rightfully so, has the potential to majorly disrupt downtown businesses and create a tremendous amount of vacancies, not just right from 7th Street to 11th Street, but maintaining access to Metro, to cash and carry, to the beer store, and beyond. This is a much more macro viewpoint I think we have to consider here. This is a long period of time. I know I can speak from experience when the 8th Street Hill collapsed. Our business took approximately, you know, if you use numbers retroactively for guidance and context, is about $25,000 of lost revenue having that hill collapse for the period of time that job was ongoing. My concern, I think rightfully so, for a lot of businesses downtown, if you extend that kind of those losses, if people can't get to you, how many can maintain being in business? So I just caution anyone on council from undervaluing the scale, the scope, and the potential ramifications of this project, because it is tremendously disruptive.
Fine. Anyone else? Seeing none, going to call the question. All in favor? One opposed, and that is defeated. Discussion of additional business, Councillor, well, I'm going to start, Councillor Dodd.
Excuse me, Your Worship, before we go further, just to follow up on that, since that material, the schedule would be available anyways, is there any way that could just be posted in a separate spot, highly visible on the city website, so people can track the bridge? I think it would bring some calm to those that might be worried.
Thank you for the question. Through Your Worship, yes, it can. It's pretty detailed with every little task. So what I'd like to do is probably scale it down and just have like those big milestones, you know, demolition of the bridge, installation of the structures on the kind of like what I described earlier as part of the milestones. Maybe a little bit more detail than that, but not much more, and we could do something nice to easily understand and very visual for the website.
Thank you. So discussion of additional business, Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make a little bit of an announcement for on Saturday. Mayor Boddy and I had the pleasure of going to a new business opening called Come On, Let's Play. It's a relatively really interesting concept. I never really thought of it because I don't have kids, but it makes sense. Yet. Sorry. It's an indoor playground, and I know they have this in Port Elgin, and with discussion with the Director of Community Services, I've been hearing how well the one in Port Elgin is. It's very busy when you have snowy weather, or it's rainy weather, or your child just needs to come out and stretch their legs and run around. Anyways, fantastic idea. So there's a grand opening called Come On, Let's Play on Saturday. It was a fantastic time. It's in the old Satellite Gymnastics building, so 2045 20th Avenue East. So basically what it is, it just has stimulating toys, themed areas. There's a little jungle gym and everything around that area. And they're open 7 days a week. So it's a fantastic idea to be able to have your child, bring your children up there for an event, let them stretch their legs, let them, have fun, play with these different activities, and to mention, it's got free Wi-Fi and food for the parents. So I had the pleasure of sitting there and drinking a coffee. But anyways, so I just wanted to give a little bit highlight to that because I think that's a very unique and very niche business that opened in that area, and I think it's something that deserves some credit for what it's doing, both for the needs in our community. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hamley.
So a friend of mine used to be a councillor in another municipality, and when I was elected last fall, I asked her what was the best piece of advice that she could give me. And she said, what you need to do is you need to sit down, shut up, and watch for a year. Then and only then should you start to effect change, because you may know the strategic plan, the official plan, and the procedural bylaw like the back of your hand, but until you get a sense of staff and of other councillors and how they all work day to day, you really can't understand what goes on and what in fact needs to be changed. The first item that has gotten my attention was the budget. Now, before anyone gets the idea that I'm going to go on about a specific project, that's not what I'm trying to talk about tonight. What I'm seeking to talk about is process. How we arrive at the budget that we do. For the public's benefit, the way budgets work now, staff drafts a capital and operating budget, and then there's a series of special council meetings where council adds or removes certain spending commitments. I believe that this process forces council to be reactive instead of proactive. No other level of government or public organization that I've been involved in asks their civil service or their administration to bring them a budget and then work from there. And so what I would like to see on the agenda at the next council meeting is for us to have a discussion about how we can provide a set of principles and priorities to guide staff when drawing up the next budget.
Good, thank you. Any other thoughts, any discussions on that? Makes sense? Nodding heads. Feel free to push a button and talk. So Ms. Bloomfield, that doesn't require a motion. It's just would probably be an additional business that we would have that discussion. I assume Ms. Allen would probably, is she back by our next? So she could be present to maybe answer some questions and help guide us through it, and we can have that discussion before we get into the into budgets, budget day. Is your hand up, Pam, or? Go ahead.
Your worship, through you, Your Worship, I'm just wondering about timing. Our next meeting is the 28th of October, and I believe, is that correct? Okay. So I believe Ms. Allen would be back and at that council meeting, so.
Good. Good, that'll work good. Now I'm seeing hands going up. Councillor Thomas
I
first.
just have a question. Are we talking about this year's budget process, or are we talking about getting something rolling for next year's? Because certainly having been here 5 years now, I would say most of the preparatory work has been done for this year's budget. The meetings are set, and from my view, October 28th might be a little bit too late to affect any real changes to the process for this year. And that's just speaking strictly from the way it's gone in the past.
Go ahead, Councillor Hamley.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that, and I'm definitely looking like a long-term fix here. I'm not trying to negatively affect this year's budget over a point of process.
But it might affect this year. It could. Okay. Councillor Tamik.
Councillor Hamley, I support investigating any different way of doing things. I think it's appropriate. What I'd ask you to do, if we are going to have that discussion, perhaps you could find precedent from 1 or 2 other municipalities who do it differently, and so you could come to us with some firm ideas, and so we're just not talking in the air.
Go ahead.
So I don't want to get too much into the discussion, but I am familiar of one very prominent one, and it's the City of Ottawa. What they do, the first step of their budget process is to council develops a budget guideline and their priorities, and then asks staff to develop the budget from there. So that's a prominent example.
Which might be difficult for this year. Good, thank you very much. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. There will be a hate crime talk taking place with the Owen Sound Police Services and Hate Crime and Extremist Investigation Team on Tuesday, October 22nd at 7 o'clock at the Harmony Center, and all are invited.
Good, thank you. My list, I've got like 15 things in the last 2 weeks, but if I can pick out just a couple of ones that I think are kind of important or special. Councillor Kepke and I attended October 3rd for the memorial service for Corporal Robert James Mitchell up at the park that was named after him. He died in Afghanistan on duty, representing Canada on October 3rd, 2006. The short form, the Freedom Riders look after this day. Most of them are, a lot of them are veterans of Afghanistan, and it's wonderful what they do for so many veterans in our community, helping people that need some help, and it's all kind of done quietly, but they look after this flag raising and service every year, and it was certainly nice to be there, and they plan to do it forever. Just set aside October 3rd, 2006. Attended the police awards and recognized the 5-year, the 10-year, the 20-year award winners and people that are retiring. Went to the Owen Sound Oktoberfest, which is a fundraiser for Radio for Oncology, is it? Yes. I note, since Councillor Thomas isn't jumping all over this, that October 5th, 1877, which was Saturday, was the anniversary of Sir John A. Macdonald visiting Owen Sound. Yeah. Coming up, we've been talking a lot about garbage environment, et cetera, and there's a workshop that's being hosted by, well, the person that sent this to me is Ruth Martell, but community members trying to make a difference. And there's so many different groups that are making a difference right now in our community with regard to trash. At the Farmers Market on Saturday, October 19th, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., there is a zero waste workshop, and the idea is to invite everyone from the community to come and learn ways to reduce your footprint. So they're talking about what things you can think about when you go to the grocery store about packaging and what you're buying, and how you can reduce what you're putting into, whether it be Blue Box or into the trash, and start thinking about that. So it'll be a good workshop to teach others in the community how to do it better, and anytime we can learn something, I don't know, there's probably none of us that don't go to the Blue Box at some point and say, I can't remember, does this go in here or does it go in there? And this is just a way of looking to reduce trash, develop new habits, and move forward with a healthier, more simple life. So again, Owen Sound Farmers Market, Saturday, October 19th from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., Zero Waste Workshop, and I think that'll be a good one. I think that completes all of our additional business. So number 18 is a motion the committee rise.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
All in favor? That is carried. Motion to adopt.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Thomas, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole considering public meetings, deputations, and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business be confirmed by this council.
All in favor? That is carried. Notices of motion? No one's giving any notices. Okay, number 21, bylaws. I'm going to step out of the chair and pass it on.
Ms. Bloomfield.
Through you, Acting Chair, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, A bylaw to amend the appointed officers bylaw to appoint a bylaw enforcement officer and a property standards officer. A bylaw to execute a site plan agreement with Ashler Holdings at 1000 6th Street East for McLean Engineering. A bylaw to execute a lease agreement with Steve Meads respecting Hangar C8 at the Billy Bishop Regional Airport. A bylaw to execute a facility use agreement with Edge Sports for the 2019 Monster Madness. And a bylaw to amend the traffic bylaw to address parking during the 10th Street Bridge reconstruction.
Thanks, Brianna. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thomas, that bylaw numbers 2019-165 through to 2019-170 be passed and enacted.
All in favor? And that's carried.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor O'Leary. With that, I think that concludes our business. On behalf of council, we're wishing all of our citizens and our neighbors throughout Grey and Bruce a very happy Thanksgiving weekend. It's now 8:10. We've completed all of our business. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.